continuing with books for now, this is my Tolkien collection, which I am very happy with. It's not a complete Tolkien collection. It's mostly just Middle-earth with a few extra bits in Tales from the Perilous Realm. As you can see, they are bookended by the Argonath. They actually came in a special edition Peter Jackson film DVD set, but they work very well as bookends. Unfortunately, Isildur's fingers have snapped off. I'm not sure how that happened. I might replace him at some point. It's a bit ironic considering Isildur is the one that cut the ring from Sauron's hands, so maybe I'll just keep it that way. That is not the Tree of Gondor, that is just a random tree ornament. My collection started with this edition of The Hobbit. This is the 70th anniversary edition. It's not an exact facsimile of the first edition of The Hobbit. There are slight differences in the cover because this is the original dust jacket that was designed by Tolkien. The publisher was didn't want to do the red and the sun or the dragon, so they're not red on the first edition. I really like this as Tolkien's original dust jacket. This is the box set of The Lord of the Rings. Now, The Lord of the Rings is actually just one novel. They say the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it's actually one novel published as 6 books, sometimes as 3 volumes. I like it when they're separated into 3 volumes because that's how I was introduced to Lord of the Rings. A lot of people nowadays prefer it just in 1 volume, which was what Tolkien originally intended, but the publisher was unable to do at the time. These dust jackets were designed by Tolkien for each publication of the volumes, but they weren't ever released in his lifetime because the publisher it was too expensive for them to do it. So they were all released in the same dust jacket at the time, but these were the original designs. I'll probably go through more detail of each of these books in separate videos. It came in a box set with this Reader's Companion, which is basically a book of annotations. You can read it alongside the novels and you're reading, but wouldn't recommend anyone reading this until after they finish the entire trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. This is the Silmarillion, published after Tolkien's death and edited by his son Christopher Tolkien. I'm not a Tolkien expert, I'm just a bit of a fan. It's said that Christopher Tolkien took a lot of editorial liberties with the Silmarillion, and a lot of people complained. So when he published more work later, he took a more outside editorial role where he made any editorial decisions are more obviously him. So, for example, in the Book of Unfinished Tales, this is a much more modern version than these, because I wanted to get this one because of the illustrations. But in Unfinished Tales, he takes the approach to preserve Tolkien's writing exactly as it was, and then anything else he comments on, and it's got like a slightly different, smaller font where he makes commentary on that. Tales from the Perilous Realm is a collection of different Tolkien stories, not just I think the only Middle-earth in here is The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. The rest is not Middle-earth. Roverandom is a lovely children's story published after Tolkien's death that he wrote for his son after his son lost a toy dog on the beach. And this is a story about a toy dog, well, about a real dog that gets turned into a toy dog and goes on a quest to try get turned back into a real dog. That's really cool. Farmer Giles of Han takes place in a sort of pseudo-historical England. It's you can't really pinpoint when it's meant to be set, but it's a farmer who goes off to fight a dragon. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is mostly a book of poetry and poems from which are meant to be written by characters in The Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth. So that is the only Middle-earth story in this one. I've not actually read all of it yet. I will get to it. And then you've got the 3 great tales. These can actually be found in various forms within the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales, because Tolkien did not finish them within his lifetime. But these were published by his son Christopher Tolkien. The Children of Hurin has taken a bunch of different versions and drafts of the Children of Hurin and edited them together to make a coherent narrative, so it actually forms a complete novel. That being said, it's still very obviously unfinished. Or not unfinished, it feels like you're reading a first or second draft. There's lacking in detail, there are sudden time jumps. I found it very enjoyable to read, though. The story is very interesting and a lot darker and more tragic than Tolkien's usual stories. But then we get to Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin, which is a completely different publication. The Beren and Luthien has several different versions of the same story in the book, because Tolkien rewrote it several times. He wrote it as the Lay of Luthien, which shows up in The Lord of the Rings. There's a very early version of the story where one of the characters, which became Sauron later, is a giant cat. It's very interesting to read. It feels like almost like a legend being told from generation to generation and changing as it's being told. But it's Tolkien coming up with different ideas every time he writes the story. It's interesting. And then the same with the Fall of Gondolin, which I've not completely read yet. So we'll save that for another time to talk more about. Anyway, I don't know if this is going to be a book channel, but I started with a book, so I'm continuing so now, this way so far. We'll see what happens.